Hey guys, it's Paradise, and today we can finally talk properly about Borderlands 4. So here's our review and impressions after playing over 150 hours, and it's not what we thought. We initially went in expecting more of the same, akin to Borderlands 3, but Borderlands 4 is actually much more. It overhauls core systems, expands on the endgame, and there's a lot more going on here than we expected. We've reached the maximum level of 50, grinded to the highest and final level 5 of the new Ultimate Vault Hunter mode, and tested out loot, bosses, and builds extensively. There's going to be no story spoilers here, and we've got a ton to say about the gameplay, the combat, the loot, and of course the endgame. So what is Borderlands 4? Well, it's still a looter shooter, but with new Vault Hunters, co-op, mountains of loot, and now huge seamless areas to explore. But this time it feels like a big step forward in where it counts in terms of gameplay and mechanics. Skill trees have nearly tripled in size compared to before, with unique capstones and augments that really change how each build feels to play. It makes experimenting way more fun and gives you a sense of missing out on cool new options if you don't try them all. You're still going to be running, gunning, looting, and blowing things up along the way, and it feels like what you want out of a Borderlands game. Story-wise, Borderlands 4 feels a bit more contained. It's set on an isolated planet and split between several large main zones as you progress through the game. It moves you through these different areas, introduces a lot of new characters, and feels much tighter and a bit shorter than Borderlands 3's story if you focus just on the story itself. If you're worried about the humor, this time it feels way more balanced. It has plenty of jokes, but without overloading you in cheesy moments, although there are still some in there occasionally. On top of that, there's plenty of returning characters, which adds a nice layer of familiarity for long-time fans. And on this point, OG fans should love this one, especially if you give it enough time. Overall, it's fun, and if you're into Borderlands, you'll really enjoy it. While it's still good solo, it's perfect for a group of friends to jump on together and have a good time. But for us, the story is actually secondary. It's the gameplay and the endgame loop that matters most, which we'll get into soon. So let's talk about the world and the map, because this time it feels big without being bloated. You can seamlessly travel between areas, which means fewer loading screens if you solely travel on foot or by vehicle, but because you can fast travel, it basically means there will be loading screens. There are no catch-a-ride stations anymore, instead you can just simply create your digirunner on the fly, making getting around so much better than in previous games. That said, the navigation system is pretty rough. You scan to generate a waypoint-like line guiding you to your pinned marker or objective. This sounds good, but it's on a cooldown, it's often hard to see, and sometimes it just disappears and often routes you the long way there, so in reality, to get around efficiently you're going to be checking your map constantly, which isn't ideal given it's slow to open. The biomes do have some variety, and each area is different, although we would have liked more dramatic differences, more akin to some areas in past Borderlands titles. That said, the world itself feels more alive than any previous Borderlands. It's not on the level of something like GTA, but it doesn't need to be. It's varied enough that it feels rewarding to simply play in and explore. You've got tons of collectibles, loads of side quests, silos and safe houses to unlock, and even open world bosses that spawn in easy to spot bubbles. These fights feel good, they seem to always reward something worthwhile, and give you reasons to go out and explore instead of just grinding or progressing. Silos, safe houses, and main encampment areas also serve as fast travel points and tie into the vault fragment hunts. This leads to finding literal vaults that act like a dungeon with a giant boss at the end, which is a really neat addition. It feels rewarding, and doing all of this extra content is so much more enjoyable and meaningful for it. Next, let's talk about the gameplay and combat. Gunplay has honestly never felt smoother, with far fewer bad-feeling guns compared to the older games. The Vault Hunter classes themselves are great. Amon may not have felt amazing early on, but once his augments kicked in, he could flame punch through enemies. Meanwhile for Vex, it's a brand new take on the Siren archetype, leaning into summoning trees that are surprisingly strong and well balanced. She's a blast to play throughout the story no matter what tree you focus on, and in the endgame she's a complete powerhouse. This might be one of the first times I've found my Vault Hunter the first go around, instead of picking one and then regretting it later. Honestly, these new Vault Hunters are each very well done, and we're impressed in how they feel to play and how varied you can build them. Boss fights this time are more mechanically involved too. You'll be grappling objects to drop invulnerability phases, air dodging to avoid big attacks, and the new movement mechanics including grappling, dashing, sliding, and hovering makes the combat feel faster and more fluid. Honestly, the game feels a bit more Destiny-like, but that feeling is even more at home here in a Borderlands setting. When it comes to bosses though, don't worry because you can skip out on all boss phases and mechanics if you're strong enough, so it rewards having an absolutely cracked build. Farming has also got leveled up across the board compared to how tedious it could be in past titles. Moxxi's Encore system and mission replays make it much easier to target drops that you need and is overall a much better system and gameplay loop. But it does come at a cost though, and it's one of our biggest issues, because replaying missions can get really tedious since it's an entire mission and separate instance of the world. Within this, NPC dialogue cannot be skipped, but luckily cutscenes can. This means that most of the dialogue during the start, the middle, or the end of a mission, and it's not just short lines either, it's long stretches of repeated chatter that you've already heard a dozen times as you keep replaying, cannot be skipped, and it generally drags down the farming experience during mission replays. Moxxi's Encore system doesn't suffer from this though, so you might find yourself leaning more into open world activities and boss farming instead of mission replays. Co-op adds a ton of fun and synergy too. For example, 2-6 was running around tanking things with an aim on build, while I was running the Dead Ringer clone setup for most of the story. This let him dive in aggressively while I deployed multiple clones for huge burst damage and crowd control, and the fights flowed much better because these two roles work together. The only downside is how world progression isn't shared, even if that's how it worked for past Borderlands titles. Because co-op is a big focus, it would be really nice if they introduced a system where you didn't have to repeatedly unlock things for your own world after doing it for someone else. For example, we finished the campaign together in co-op and did a bunch of activities, but 2-6's world didn't unlock any of the open world activities like silos, safe houses, and more. It basically was like all of the world progression was only shared on my side, but he did still get his levels and loot. So hopefully this is something that can be worked on. Now let's go over loot because the chase and excitement feels truly alive again. Weapons feel way more varied thanks to the licensing and perk system, so you're constantly picking things up and they make you want to stop and actually test them out. Gear excitement really is back once again, and they weren't lying when they said there's now 30 billion combinations. Borderlands 4 also introduces new systems that tie into build crafting. The ordnance slot replaces your grenades and heavy weapons, now having a cooldown, so you can actually use them more freely and often. Then you have rep kits that aren't just for heals, some give overshields, lifesteal, or straight up damage and fire rate buffs, making them vital for late game builds. So maybe keep an eye out for any rep kits with strong combinations on them, because you just might be using them into the endgame. On top of that, every mission and generally every activity that you complete has a reward with a sort of loot box that gives you cosmetics or weapons. And the cosmetics are pretty deep too. You've got proper options to change your character's looks, full color options, weapon skins, vehicle paint jobs, and full-on different vehicles to drive, even echo drone cosmetics. The inventory system also plays a big part in how you interact with loot, of course in any loot game, and Borderlands 4 almost does it all right. It's much better than before. You can mark favorites, batch sell things, and sort items quickly. And once you get used to junking items on pickup, it becomes extremely efficient to mass loot and then mass sell things. It feels so good when you're intensely farming for specific items. It's not without its issues though. Opening the menu takes a couple seconds, which is a bit annoying. It cuts out any voice or dialogue from the story, and while in co-op it doesn't pause the game, so you can get downed while organizing loot. On top of that, inspecting items to read things like firmware will force you to close out of the menu instead of just going back like it says. This will then clear out any features that you set and basically reset your inventory or bank. It's a frustrating step backwards in an otherwise much smoother and improved system. Now for the endgame, this is where Borderlands 4 really shines. The story wraps up around level 30, but the cap is level 50. And then you have the Ultimate Vault Hunter mode ranks, which levels up to Ultimate Vault Hunter mode 5, increasing enemy damage, health, and more, but increasing loot quality and unlocking more firmware options. The really cool part is that you have specializations to keep you progressing after you hit max level. This gives you a sense of climbing in power and refining your build long past the usual endgame point. This gives you a sense of still climbing in power and refining your build even after hitting level cap. Plus, a majority of these are actually impactful for your build, with nodes and perks to unlock that make a difference. It's a really good system and feels like Guardian ranks from 3 but just done better. As said before, farming is smoother than ever with the new Encore system, and there's a lot more to do in the launch version of Borderlands 4 than we had in Borderlands 3. Weekly wildcard missions give guaranteed legendaries, there's the big Encore target for specific bosses with higher drop rates, and Morris's black market vending machine works kind of like Destiny's Xur, except here it spawns randomly in the world and each player sees different loot. Then you have vaults, open world style dungeons, world bosses, random badasses, world events, and replayable missions. This culminates in an endgame loop that feels deep and rewarding, especially for the launch version of the game. It feels really good, it's fun, and gives you a sense of wanting to grind, wanting to farm and experiment until you have the most busted build. There's even a story skip option that lets you start new characters straight away at level 30, which makes experimenting with different Vault Hunters a lot easier. Now for the visuals and performance. Visually, Borderlands 4 can look really good, especially in the early areas. Stability is also very strong, I didn't crash once in over 150 hours. Previously, in our preview, we mentioned how we encountered massive issues with performance as well as major stuttering when traveling around the world to new areas. You can see here just how bad the stuttering was when traveling, and this would happen all the time. Furthermore, you can see the frame rate in some areas wasn't great, and that was with frame gen on. Just to clarify, we do have multiple PCs and 2.6 was running above the recommended specs and still had these same issues. Regardless, even on my machine, here you can see me running a brand new game in beta, Battlefield 6, without any performance issues while streaming and recording at the same time. While these aren't the same type of game, we rarely see performance issues even in new titles, with the most recent new games that had major performance problems being Monster Hunter Wilds and Dragon's Dogma 2. So we were expecting to get similar performance to more recent titles that have released, which in many cases is over 60 FPS natively, excluding a few outliers. But luckily, since the preview, there's actually been a patch that fixes most of the major performance issues that we experienced, which is really awesome. Most of the stuttering when traveling between areas is resolved now, although load times are a little longer when you have to cache. Some areas from before that had 30 to 40 FPS with frame gen on are now well over 150 plus. But sometimes performance is still inconsistent depending on what you're doing, where you are in the world, whether you're in an instance or not, but that's probably just because of how chaotic Borderlands is as a game, with massive amounts of loot and objects around the place. But overall, it's much improved compared to the preview version, and now you can play even without frame gen on and still achieve playable frame rates natively. So after the patch, overall performance is good, sometimes really good, but there are some dips. Now let's quickly talk about the Steam Deck because I have one, I love it, and I had to test out the game on it. It should be the perfect Steam Deck game given the control scheme, and who doesn't want to play Borderlands on the go? Well, sadly I can't recommend it yet. I get anywhere from 10 to 30 FPS, generally being on the lower end of that with absolutely everything on low. It's just barely playable but not in a good way and it doesn't look good, so for now sadly I wouldn't recommend it unless something major changes or there's a different way to run it. I am however excited for the Switch 2 version, so maybe there will be some patches or optimizations for lower end hardware around then. So we've talked about a lot, the good and the bad, but at its heart, Borderlands 4, when it comes to the gameplay, the loot, and the endgame, is the most fun we've had with the series since Borderlands 2. The loot is exciting, the builds are massively expanded, and the combat feels fast and fluid thanks to the new movement mechanics, and the endgame loop is seriously addictive. It's not perfect, but overall, after over 150 hours, we feel like this is the Borderlands sequel we've been waiting for, even though it has its quirks. Honestly, we highly recommend this game. It's super fun, especially if you're into loot, stats, and build crafting. If you love looter shooters, Borderlands 4 is absolutely worth your time. Here at Arekkz Gaming, we're two friends who love to play games. You have me, Paradise, as well as 2.6.
Our goal is to keep the videos as concise as possible by cutting out any of the fluff and focusing on what really matters with high quality videos.
So make sure you're subscribed down below for more videos on your favorite games coming very soon.